Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Life After Landline. If someone could just type into that question box so that I know that you can hear me. A yes from somebody would be great. Thank you. This session will be recorded. You will receive notification if you have signed up today of when that recording is available. This is an interactive session, so your questions are encouraged. We will answer them at the end. To those of you who are joining the call for the first time, MeasureX is a training organization that works specifically with the utility industry. We have been working with your industry for the last 17 years and roughly have about 225 plus utility companies that we've worked with from either a customer service, sales training, leadership, or coaching perspective. Today joining me on the call is Dave Haddox from Hiring Solutions. Dave is CEO of Hiring Solutions. Hiring Solutions has been helping companies for 23 years with hiring decisions, coaching, and management development. Hiring Solutions has been working with rural telephone companies for 12 years. I have a number of clients that have used Hiring Solution to help them with a variety of different situations related to hiring. The objectives today are simple. We want to look at upselling. An important part of upselling is transitional phrases and billing software. Each of you have it. Some of you, depending on what you have a built-in tool. So we want to talk about how to use what you already have to help increase the use of that tool and how to make it easier for your team. And the most important one in an upselling situation is identifying need in that situation and benefit. And Dave's going to look at sharing with you some ideas on how to use a personality profile. When you look at both your existing staff, any new people you may be hiring, you are going from a customer service culture to a sales culture. And naturally, transitioning those people from service to sales is not easy. So he's going to talk about how to use that tool for that and how to identify some of those stressors that are taking place in the workplace so you can increase productivity. Some of you naturally are having turnover in your staff, people retiring. So you have people moving up from within the company, and naturally you're also hiring new people. And naturally going from a service to a sales culture, hiring the best person to be in a sales role is important to all of you, as is identifying within the company, if you're moving a person up to another position, what are their skill sets so that you know how to best help them and develop them for that new position. So why is upselling difficult? Because you have customers calling in for one of two reasons. They're calling in because either they want to buy something or they have some kind of service inquiry interest that's calling they need a little help with. In our experience, what happens from the calls that we place to the telephone companies we interact with, if we call in for a service, whether it be phone, TV, internet, alarm, any of those other services, that individual is focused on helping us with that specific service. And in most cases, they are not making the customer aware of other services. And in my perception, the reason why is because if they were to suggest something else, they perceive that is pressuring the customer. And so naturally, they aren't comfortable in making that decision. And naturally, many of your customers call for a variety of different reasons that are not direct sales reasons. They want to know something about their account, a question. Now, those people didn't call in a buying mode. All they wanted some help with was some kind of service inquiry. But the challenge is, in many of those inquiries, there could be an opportunity to suggest or make that customer aware of another service. And the challenge is for the team is there again, the customer didn't call to buy from us. Why would we suggest another service? So an important one in upselling is something called transitional phrases. Transitional phrases are simply opening the door to suggest other services. So for instance, let's assume we had a customer that's just called in because they want to know what their next bill is going to be. I, as the representative, I have that account open in front of me. I am looking at that account. I am helping them with that service request. But I notice that they are on one of our older internet plans. Now, right now, they may not know we have another one even to offer, or that if we were to make them aware of another service, we might be able to bundle those services together, which would be a cost savings to them. So transitional phrases are just what we're calling to create the interest for that individual to see if one of those other things that we are offering as a service or product might be a fit for them. So as we're going to move on, we're going to talk about that upselling tool. So right now, here's what I'd like you to do, because I want to know just from your side. The question is, right now, if you're a Mac, Innovative, NISC, or ComSoft user, the question is, do you currently have that alert feature that is built into most of your billing softwares? Are you currently using that alert? Is that alert turned on and available to your representatives? If you would take a moment and give me a yes or no on that. Okay. Give everybody just a second to complete that. All right, still have a couple people completing. Okay, and the answer is roughly 83% of you right now are do not have that turn on or functional in those interactions. Okay, so let's talk about that, because right now, if you're using one of those software applications, either one of those, it does exist. Now, ComSoft, from what I'm told, is an additional add-on investment. Some of you may have already purchased it if you're using ComSoft. Here's an important thing. You have an existing customer that has called in. They are either interested in buying a service, so they've called maybe to add another service, or they've called with some kind of service question. That customer didn't call in to buy, but your alert capability that is built into your software, when that customer account comes up, depending on the type of software you have, there is a notification, sometimes it's a window or an alert that shows up on that screen for the representative that is letting them know that there might be an opportunity to make the customer aware of another service, an upgrade in service. If that's turned on, it's not true, I think, for all, but for a couple of those providers, there's also reporting built into it. So in this particular case, the customer calls in, they have a service request, the representative could complete the service request, they have that little window that says you should mention this to them, and some of them have the capability to put in what we'll call a little script. So you could put in the transitional phrase. So the representative either has to click the window that says, I let them know about it, or I didn't. That's going to help you determine, for all of those phone calls that are coming into your organization day in and day out, what percentage did we at least suggest another service? Identifying the emotional need. Remember, that customer didn't really call up initially to ask about that, maybe that specific service. Maybe it could be an add-on, or in this case, we have the customer in a service situation, and now we're trying to make them aware of something else. It's important to identify the need for that customer. What's the real need, and how is your service for that thing that they didn't call about? How are you creating interest so that they see value in making the decision to take that add-on? It could be savings, because you're telling them about how if we bundle these services together, we can save you roughly $250 a year. Well, that one's easy because there's a savings investment. But right now, the usage capability of your customers is changing, even from what it was a couple years ago. Most of you on this call are offering multiple faster, higher speed internet plans. You're trying to sell those services. If we haven't identified the need of how they're using that service at their home, then naturally it's tough for them to consider making that upgrade. But if we in that conversation have identified a little need, asking a couple questions, well, tell me how you're using your internet service at your home now it creates what we will call opportunity to explain that. And maybe, depending on your plan pricing, maybe the difference from the plan they're currently on to the next plan is only an additional $10. That becomes easy to sell if the customer sees benefit. Now, based on our experience right now, this is one of those huge opportunities for improvement. And all the calls that we place to all the phone companies we interact with, we are starting to see more companies that will at least let the customer know the service is available to them at that company, but they do not create any kind of transitional approach, nor do they look to identify any kind of need to even explain how that service might benefit them. Huge opportunity in the calls that you take every day from your customers. So let's talk about improving those upselling skills, because upselling is not easy. If you have recording software in place, use it. Right now, reviewing those calls when customers are calling in and sharing with those team what's working, how to change their approach, how to use those transitional phrases just to actually start implementing into conversations with customers. And the most difficult one, as your team goes from being a service group to a sales group right now, if you ask somebody to buy, especially in a suggestive upselling situation, are they all going to say yes? And the answer is no. That's why helping them from a coaching standpoint. That alert feature, seeing as how the vast majority of you right now do not have that feature functional, if you want to improve the results from your team's interaction with your customers, I'm going to suggest you turn that on, but don't just turn it on and expect that they are then going to start using that. It's going to require some effort on your part from both coaching. If you do not have call recording software in place, the next best thing is to practice that. I want to role play with them, create some of those situations so that I can get them comfortable on when and how to use a transitional phrase in those conversations. That being said, we're going to move on to the next part. We have those salespeople. We're trying to help them be more effective in their day-to-day roles in the interaction. And so right now, Dave has asked me to pose a question to you. And the question he's asked me to pose to you is this: how many of you right now are using any type of personality profile instrument at your company for hiring purposes? If you would be so kind as to give me a yes or no in that box. Give everyone just a second. Okay. That looks like the majority. So let's see what the poll says. The poll says that the vast majority of you on the call right now are not using any kind of personality profile in those interactions. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to Dave so Dave can share, in his case, how that might be helpful, whether you're using existing people or, in this case, working with new people in those interactions you are having with customers. How to make an effective use of a fairly small investment to improve results. Dave, it is all yours.
David, thank you. Yeah, now, Dave, you know I have to make a transition on my side, so are you seeing a full screen now?
I am, and if you can find a way to get rid of that task box, there you go. We're good.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time and attention today. Dave, thank you for the question, and it's very interesting. That question that you posed, we came back with 7% are currently using assessments. Now, in 1992, when we started hiring solutions across the country, in the U.S., about 5% of the companies were using some type of assessment in their selection, coaching, and training. Recently, I read a report from SHRM, a white paper, and in that report, over 50% of companies at large are using some type of selection tool. Now, the more interesting aspect of this is that the top of class, the best-in-class organizations, as were voted on by their peer groups, over 80% of those organizations are using assessments. So in between 80 and 85% of the best organizations within given industries are using some type of selection tool. So we know that this is something that is increasing dramatically from 5% 20 plus years ago to over 80% with the best organizations in the country. So that's why. Now the next slide, going to talk about what it is we're going to focus on today. And the first bullet point that we have up is culture fit. Now, any of you that have worked in an organization that you did not fit in, that you were not comfortable, you know how miserable that was, and you probably didn't stay around very long. So that's one aspect of culture fit. The other aspect is that if you do fit, if you do enjoy your coworkers, your peers, if you have that camaraderie that takes place, that's a solid culture fit. And that's what we all look for. We want to be comfortable. We want to have that fulfillment when we go to work. Now, Dave hit on a key component of culture fit, and that is a service culture moving and transitioning to a sales culture. And we can also identify how to support that using selection tools and personality profiles. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to have a graph page up here in a few minutes, and we will talk specifically about what that looks like in a lot of organizations. The next bullet point up is job fit. Now, job fit is very interesting because I may fit into the culture, and I may really get along well with all of my peers, all of my coworkers, that if I'm not suited, if I'm not wired to fulfill the responsibilities of the job that I've been hired to perform, that also is a mismatch. And the next bullet point is talking specifically about what that creates, and that is stress. So if I have good culture fit, but I am missing job fit, I'm not going to be as productive as I could or should be, and that means that my peers are going to have to pick up the slack. And they're going to have to fill in that productivity component, which causes resentment, conflict, and stress. So you can see how this all ties together. So if nothing else, remember that stress is normally caused by a mismatch in the organization or a mismatch in the job position itself. And if I am consuming a lot of energy just to fit into the culture, to fit into my role, that's energy that I cannot use to perform my duties. So it's kind of a spiraling situation which impacts everybody. The one thing about stress, it's shared and transferred very easily. The next bullet point I have here is benchmarking. And benchmarking is nothing more complicated than taking top performers in a specific role, and we take their scores, and that develops a benchmark for that specific culture, position, and organization. Now, benchmarking is a huge benefit. We have some organizations, in the telephone industry, that they have reduced turnover in between 15 and 20% in their critical positions just by using benchmarking practices and using a selection tool on the front side. The last bullet point is selection components. All of us are responsible for management, and we were put in those roles because of our technical skills, but hiring is not a skill set that we use very often. And I'm going to simplify that for you. I'm going to put 3 specific bullet points or 3 specific areas that you need to focus on, and then I'll be happy to send you additional support material if you're interested. So let's move on to a personality graph page. And this is taken from the tool that we recommend for selection. and can be used in coaching, training, and development called the preview. Now, I only have a small piece of the result up here in front of you, but if you look down the left-hand side, and you can see that I have it benchmarked in green and blue, and the left-hand side is a customer service focus, the green blocks, if you will. Those represent a customer service focus. And using Dave's terminology, the folks that fall within the green boxes here on this graph page, those are information givers, and they love to answer questions. Now, the blue boxes are a sales focus. They like to win, they like to achieve goals, and they like to gather information, and they're very comfortable doing that. They will ask questions. So as Dave was talking about, that those transitional phrases, they're going to come much easier for the sales focus folks. So let's go back up to the upper left-hand side, the green boxes. Cooperative people, and you can see it's diplomatic, cooperative, and submissive there. Cooperative people measure the value that they bring, their self-worth, if you will, on how well they support other people. Now, that's a beautiful characteristic for a customer service industry. It truly is. Then we go to the right middle. On the right-hand side, we have the 3 rows of green boxes, and that's conscientious, conventional, and organized. And these people are very methodical. They love to follow rules. They will be very comfortable responding and reacting from a known set of facts. So the policies and guidelines that you have in place are very important for these folks. Then we go to the lower left, and that's introvert, self-sufficient, and reserved. These people don't like to volunteer additional information. They will provide information if you ask a specific question, but they're not going to volunteer comfortably a lot of additional insights into what you provide, going to and speaking to Dave's transitional, phrases. This will be more difficult for these folks that are introverted. Now let's go up to the upper side, the upper right side, the blue scales, in the independent, competitive, and assertive. This is that sales focus. Competitive people want to win. Competitive people measure their value based on how well they fulfill the goals and responsibilities. Then we go to the middle left, spontaneous, innovative, and reactive. These people always ask why. And they can come as a question to the organization, why do we do it this way? Which can be helpful in, creating new perspectives, new projects, new goals, new products, services. Very beneficial there. But also, they're very comfortable asking your customers, why aren't they using thus or so? So that is something that is naturally wired with these folks. Then let's go back to the right-hand lower side, and we have extrovert, group-oriented, and outgoing, and these folks like to be the center of attention. They like to be the star. They like to be seen as a positive contributing member of the group. So if they're driven to win, and they'll ask why, and they like to have that social interaction with folks, even on a telephone, this can be very, very powerful. Now, if you had the opportunity to split people up and have them just perform one of these particular duties, that would be great, but the reality is your folks have to perform all of these functions. So the value that we get from having this information is we have an impartial third party, an assessment result, if you will, that shows them where they need to tweak their behavior, where they need to modify their behavior a little bit, and what those gaps are and in which area. The reason it's so critical to have this impartial third party come up with this result, if you will, is now it's not a conflict in between the supervisor and the CRM. It is literally an objective assessment that lays this out, and once you identify these areas, folks are very comfortable modifying and adapting just a bit. So for coaching, training, and development, if I know where I need to focus, it makes it much easier, reduces stress, increases productivity. So it can be this simple to identify where someone is going to be most comfortable, where they're going to be most valuable for the organization. This applies to not only existing staff, but also the new folks coming in. So let's talk about job fit. These three legs that you have on your screen right now, most organizations do a great job in gathering the history of the applicant. And that's nothing more than an application, which is nothing more than a timeline, and a resume, which in reality is a marketing tool. That's all it is. Then we have the interview. Now the interview is where we get that interaction, and they're on their best behavior, and they've probably been coached or trained on how to interview effectively. So we need to focus on this area also. So we have history, we have the interview, and then job fit. And the only way to get job fit is by using some type of assessment. So we do have some tools and we have guidelines that we'll be happy to share with you folks. If you'll just send us an email, we'll send you some simple forms that we've developed over the years. So, summing up, the reasons for using assessments: increase productivity. If I am performing in areas that I'm comfortable, I'm automatically going to be more productive. If you tell me how to support those gaps in those areas that I'm not comfortable, that'll also increase my productivity. If I fit into the culture and to my position, reduces turnover. It helps the company, the organization, know what their bench strength is by using benchmarking, and make sure that you have folks to move into these positions as people retire and move on. And it reduces stress for everyone, because remember, everyone shares stress very effectively. And if you do these things, it automatically improves morale. All of these things translate into a happier customer base. So, thank you for your time. And Mr. Saxby, I'm going to try to transition this back to you, sir. You should have it.
So, based on what you've heard on upselling, the couple ideas I created, and what Dave had to say on personality tools, what questions do you have? And if you would be so kind to just put them in the box down there at the bottom, type in whatever your questions are, and either he or I will answer them. Give everyone a few seconds here to put anything they may have as a question. Here's one question that came up from what somebody, Dave, and that is, how are the assessments administered?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, great question. Today, all of the assessments that we use are delivered online. They can be taken anywhere that someone has access to the internet. And actually, a few of our more simple assessments, they can be taken on a smartphone. So very easy, very convenient.
Time frame as far as, I mean, if somebody's taking one of these?
From the integrity questionnaires, somewhere around 10 minutes. Some of the basic personality communication profiles, 10 to 15 minutes, and the most lengthy ones that we have run about 45 minutes. And they're very comprehensive. The preview is one of those. Great question.
And I had one other question here. Let me just bring it up so that I can see it on screen. Bear with me a minute. Is the personality type of the person you are interviewing for a position more important than their experience or training in the area you are hiring?
Great question. Someone who's done a little bit of research. They're finding that a job fit, a personality fit, with the organization and with the role and responsibility of the individual is more predictive for success than experience, education, background of any type. We see people all day long hire people for skills and experience, and they're terminated for personality clashes, those lack of fit, if you will, whether it's culture or position. And by the same token, if I hire somebody for their fit, their personality match with the organization, I can normally coach and train the skill sets that are required for them to be successful.
Any other questions? All right, then it looks like we have exceeded our time by a minute or two here, so I want to thank all of you for your participation today. Once the recording of this event has been made, you will be notified if you have signed up today. Thank you very much for your participation, and have a great rest of the week.